and the smallest little bit of like our whole operation. Does that make sense? Because we do so much that I wouldn't say the smallest, but like I started this as like I don't know, we do a lot of other things, and mine doesn't pay the bills. Does that make sense?
A little bit. Well, I think that's like a perfect way to get started is tell us, let's start with Northwest Land and Cattle, like the history of in your family heritage and like how you got to where you are today, and
I love it.
Explain what you guys do.
Perfect. So I'm 5th generation, and where we're sitting is where I was raised. So I was raised in the house my grandma was born in. Isn't that crazy?
That is so
it looks better now, I tell everybody. But I love it. I never knew any different. So growing up, you know, we had pigs and cows and all the things, and I think you don't realize how special that is until you like get to college and you start meeting other people and you're like, wow, I really, you know, was lucky. But I tell, my granddaddy is 96 and still with us.
I've met him.
Yes.
And I got to chat with him in the parking lot. And it was like the highlight of one of the huge highlight. I mean, it was amazing talking to him.
I tell everybody he has forgotten more about cows than I'll ever know.
Yeah.
But he used to raise hogs on the Cape Fear River with his dad. Okay. And it's just crazy hearing all those stories. But so all I've ever done pretty much is farm. So I went to NC State.
Okay.
And it's funny, my husband was at NC State at the same exact time in agriculture, and we didn't know each other. But and when you realize how small the ag industry is, like that's crazy. But came back, farm full time with my dad. We used to raise stocker cattle. So what that meant is we were going and we were buying cattle every week at like 300 to 400 pounds. And then we would raise them up to around 900, and then we were selling them on video auction.
Oh my gosh.
And we would load 18-wheelers and they would go to Kansas. So the market fell. I lost a lot of money. We lost a lot of money. And I tell everybody, farmers are like the most, I don't know, I would say maybe adaptable people, but like we will try something else, right? So we just kind of keep pivoting, and I think everybody says you gotta love it, and you gotta love it because
it's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. So we pivoted, and me and my husband got married. He is also a 5th generation farmer.
From the same kind of area?
Kinda. So about 45 minutes from here.
Okay.
One county over. And so we're raising, our twins are 9. We're raising 6 generations on both sides.
That's so cool.
It's crazy. But whenever we kind of got married and regrouped, we row crop with my father-in-law.
Yep.
So we raised corn, soybeans, cotton, and peanuts.
Yep.
So we raise peanuts for birdsong peanuts. And we actually raise a lot of seed peanuts, which means we're raising the seed that the farmer will plant the next year.
Got it.
But anyway, they were bigger row crops farmers than me and my dad, and we just kind of redid everything. So we have a sand pit. So my dad he kind of headed all that up, and then my husband took over the row crops down here, and I went to get to play with all the livestock. And we used to, it's funny how things you look back and things work out, but we were selling whole hogs to restaurants in downtown 12 years ago.
Yep.
And then I had issues with my pregnancy, and we had to sell all our hogs because they were kind of like my hobby, I would say.
Yeah.
And we had bought Berkshire genetics out of like Ohio, like dream pigs, right?
Yeah.
If you can have dream pigs.
Yeah.
And it was, I said I would never do it again, and then here we are. But I loved it. So when RX was downtown and then Pembroke, I was delivering whole hogs to the restaurants years and years ago. So that was fun. And then I always said I would never do cows because it takes so much time, not on anything except for like how much time it takes to raise a cow.
Right, like the time period of.
That's right. From the time it hits the ground So, and the gestation on a cow is the same as a human. So that mama cow is going to carry a baby for 9 months.
Oh my gosh.
And so you have to, you know, obviously take care of that mama.
Yep.
And then from the time it hits the ground to the time it goes to the processor, it can vary, but around 16, 18 months after that. So I always said, like, y'all don't want me to get into that, all this stuff. But I started back because years and years ago, I found out I'm allergic to a food preservative, and they put it in a lot of stuff. They put it in some mascara, salads, all kind of stuff. And I've always just, I guess especially growing up on the farm, where we're sitting, my parents actually had a huge amount of produce when I was in high school. So these are actually Dad's old produce tables.
So cool.
But I said I would never do all that again. All I did was pick produce. You know, I went to college. I didn't know anybody. I called Dad. I was like, I want to come home. And he was like, okay, I'll plant, you know, another acre of tomatoes. And I was like, never mind.
And keep you busy. Yeah.
Never mind. But we love hosting. We love all that. And we were having a Friendsgiving. And my husband was going to order meat from like some ranch. And I was like, this is dumb. Like, we have all this. So I kind of started thinking about all of it again, and I think there's just so much, I don't know, there's something really cool about supporting the local community and the way everything's growing around here. I think I don't want to say the only way it's going to survive, but I mean, Brunswick County is one of the fastest growing.
It is, yeah.
Places.
I think it's the fastest growing county
I thought I
in the
had
state.
read that, but then I wasn't sure. But
yeah.
So when you start thinking about that, you know, I'm not going to be able to get bigger as far as land or anything like that. So
And they're not making any more land.
They're not. So I think I just love the idea. You know, I grew up listening to Granddaddy, and they had the fish man would come by, and they had the milkman, and I've always loved history, especially when it came to farming and your food and how things were back then. And when I was on bed rest for, you know, 11 weeks, I even got into, the nurses thought I was crazy because, you know, I was only allowed out of bed 30 minutes a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to be in a wheelchair.
That would drive you crazy.
And imagine.
Especially you, like, that's used to, like, being outside, working hard. Yeah.
So I started researching, like, prohibition and, like, how the farmers and, like, I've just always been fascinated by it. So when I started, my tagline is the new old-fashioned way. And I said, we have to support the whole animal because all these people, they were like, it's not going to be successful because everybody's going to buy your steaks and you're going to be left with all this hamburger. Everybody always tries it and it never works. So I was like,
challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Huh? Like, yeah, let's.
And I was like, but if we can explain to the people that we have to eat the whole animal, right? Like if we can explain that if we are going to take this animal and take its life to feed us, which is what, you know, everybody has their opinions, but in my mind, you know, God gave us these animals to feed us.
Absolutely.
And I was like, if we're going to do this, we got to support the whole animal. So when I first started, I didn't have a storefront. I was online only. And then COVID hit right after I kind of started. But you had to be in my club.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of
Was it
get
like
was
it like a membership, like kind of thing?
It's called the Farm Club. It was a set price every month, and I didn't even tell you what you were getting.
Cool.
I guaranteed you like 2 premium steaks, and then depending on the weather, you know, something to grill or something to put in the crock pot.
Yeah.
And then a certain amount of hamburger. But like other than that, I wasn't telling you.
It was like a monthly type thing?
Yep. And I tell everybody that, like, who would have thought I would be as blessed as I am for the community to have supported it? Because without that, I wouldn't be here. I love, again, history, but we found the maps and all of this land, and my grandma's, her dad, right? So, he used to own all the way to 74, like way back in the day, right? Like crazy amount of land.
Yeah.
And he was a partner when the old, like, department store was downtown Wilmington.
Yeah.
And Belk's bought them out, right? And so they would get on the train here.
Yeah.
and it was like a passenger train, and go to Wilmington. And I'm like, this is crazy.
That is so neat.
He was a Gaylord. And if you like start researching, I'm like, if we knew, like, if we could go back and tell y'all, please don't sell all this.
I know.
Because they probably sold it for something, I don't know.
Yeah. But the idea of being able to hop on a train here and take that to downtown Wilmington, like, that's the neatest.
They said they would like go see a movie or go do whatever, go shopping, and then you would come back here.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy to me. Like, now we would never, like, you can't even imagine how it was then.
Definitely no cell phones, definitely no social media, like, just like truly just being present in the moment. All right, so we had to, just to give everybody a little we had to pivot because the wind was getting a little funky.
The lovely North Carolina coast wind.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure this is a perfect example of potentially what you guys deal with farming and raising cattle and everything you do. There's elements that you can't control, and you just have to deal with it, huh?
Yes. The pigs love when we have windy days and mud.
The mud I always knew, but the wind, I didn't know that.
They love it, yeah. So it's crazy. Last summer, my husband actually rigged up a sprinkler deal. He bought like little hoses and stuff off Amazon, and you would go out there, and the pigs, the wind would be blowing, and they would all be laying in a line under the sprinklers.
No way.
But
that's hilarious.
Yeah, weather is such a huge thing that most people, and what's crazy, me and my husband have been lucky enough to, we were on like a state committee for North Carolina Farm Bureau Young Farmers.
Yep. And
we have traveled all over lots of parts of the country with that Young Farmer program. And so we got to see how farmers in Arizona and all these other places, and we are so blessed to live where we live.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
Especially with water is a huge concern.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, we were on a farm in Arizona, and they flood irrigate out there, and they had to tell the county how much water they were going to use before they started planting.
And like get it approved by the county?
And there was like, 50 of us from North Carolina looking around like, excuse me, what?
Yeah.
But it's crazy.
Well, like when you think about it, that's like actual desert out there, and you talk about like a food desert.
Yeah.
I mean, and to your point, like how lucky are we to be here where we, like my wife and I, we come to your shop and buy food that's grown and raised right here.
It's when I tell people, I said, I love to travel. I said, but you start talking about appreciating where you live and where you're lucky enough to call home. I can be from our cow barn to on a paddleboard in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, that is true.
And it's like, where else could you do that?
No, it's amazing. Serious.
But. So
before we switched, you were telling us about the membership group that you were in, where you were delivering the boxes of meat.
Yes.
And so as part of the progression of how you've come to where you are now.
So everybody thought I was crazy. We started with that. I was working, I didn't have my storefront. I was pretty much working out of my walk-in freezer. And so
this one right here.
And this was my parents, 30 some years ago, and it's actually really big. So I cut it in half. I couldn't afford to cool all of it. So I cut it in half. I had to go to Cape Fear Restaurant Equipment, and he sold me a used wall, and we cut it.
A used wall.
We cut it to fit, put a door in it, and then I had to buy new compressors for the back of it.
Yep.
And so the front of it's kind of storagey, and so I was working out the front. So I would roll the meat out, pack all the boxes. It was wild. And looking back at it, and me telling girls that come to work with me now, well, we didn't have this. It was all in here. They just look at me like, there's no way.
Yeah. And was it just you, one gal show,
so,
or did you some family help in? Or?
Yeah. I tell everybody, you always see my face, but there's so many, I wouldn't be able to do any of it without family. And my best friends that were all helping me at the beginning, now they show up and they're like, y'all get paid?
Yeah, seriously.
They're like, we had to sticker meat and ship meat. And, but I tell you, they say, one of my favorite things was they say your vibe attracts your tribe. And I'm like, man, I got a heck of a support system and friends.
Well, yeah, you've created something that's so cool to be a part of, and you're solving, in my mind, a serious problem, our food system. When you really dig into it, the stuff that we used to think was okay to eat and now you see it's like, how did we get down this rabbit hole?
And what's weird is like, you know, when we were kind of coming up, they kind of had switched from, you don't need to fry things in animal fat, you need to do seed oils.
Yes.
And
that's
now
a huge
it's like,
one.
now it's flipping back.
Yeah, they're like, no, that's like the worst thing you could do because that's like highly processed and not natural.
And I used to tell everybody, I'm like, if we ate like my grandparents ate their whole lives, like, I mean, my granddaddy
Your
is
granddaddy's 96.
healthy.
And he walks over here on his own to get some boiled peanuts. I think is when I met him. Yeah.
But they always ate so, they never got into any of the trends or anything. They always had a meat and their veggies, and they, you know, for a while everybody was trying to get us to cut out carbs, and I mean, they were like, absolutely not. My grandma was going to have biscuits or something at every meal.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you think about how they ate and how they lived their life, I mean, it's just, that's literally what everybody's trying to get back to now.
I know. So you were talking about also, you know, raising animals and you know, not using the whole animal, but taking care of the whole animal and like the process and the system. And I've kind of nerded out on the, you know, regenerative farming and like sustainable farming. Tell me a little bit about that and kind of your philosophy on how you guys farm and stuff like that.
So I always say, you know, farmers want to take the best care of everything because we're farming the same land over and over and over and over. And we want it to be better than we found it, you know? And especially when you start thinking about like the animals and all, and you know, thinking about how my granddaddy was raising hogs on the river and how they did things then. And I tell people, I said, we're still doing the same things. We're just doing it the new old-fashioned way, like, right? So we're bringing in a little bit more technology and a little bit more research on why we're doing the things we're doing. But, you know, I think it's kind of a misconception that we're giving these animals more than they need, right? Like, people, that's like one of the number one things we get asked. And I'm like, look, if y'all knew what it costs to give them, I said, we're not giving them nothing they don't need. And we are doing things kind of the old-fashioned way. I mean, when you think about, prime example, my pigs, they're in a huge field with trees and everything else, and I'm like, I can't get them up, and you know, like, it's all, it's definitely the opposite of what you would consider, I guess, commercial hogs now, where they're in a house
pen or something.
And climate controlled. It's definitely, I would say, when you think about, so we don't bring any new cows in. We have our mama cows, and then like we were talking about the gestation of that, and then we raise up, and then we will keep any of the girls, the heifers that we want to keep to go into kind of replace the older mama cows that would get sold at like a coal barn or something. But we'll save our girls, and then the guys, usually we castrate them, and then they roll into our beef program. And what's really, I would say, unique, and what's funny is I went to school to, you know, learn how to do it, I guess, like the commercial way, right? Like they teach you all this stuff. And in order for me to go to the processor every month, I can't calve once a year or twice a year like they taught us in school, right? Like you were supposed to have like a 30-day calving season or something. You know, they want you, all of it to happen at one time. And what they're doing is, if you were selling on truckloads like we used to, you want them all to be the same weight at the same time of year.
Right, exactly.
Well, now I need the opposite of that.
So it's like, whatever we taught you how to do in commercial farming, we're going to do the opposite. Yeah, and so I was actually I was speaking at the vet school, which is crazy enough, but I was on a panel and it was all this, and I was like, there was like 2 years there where like people would be like, oh, you do you calve in the fall or the spring? And I would be like, oh, you know, fall. And then like in the back of my head, it was like I was embarrassed to be like, and winter, and because people would look down at you if you didn't do it you know, the commercial way. Right.
And I've always just, you know, you could go to the processor twice a year, but what are you gonna do? Keep it in the freezer?
Well, exactly. And I was just about to say, I mean, that's the beauty of the recurring cycle because it's fresh,
Yes.
right? It's like, you know, we use what we process what we need for this period of time and keep it like rolling.
And that's, you know, whenever I started researching all this and kind of, me and my husband went and toured different processors across the state. And everybody's always like, why do you now? far? So we use Piedmont Custom Meats, which is 4 hours from where we're sitting right now. So I haul hogs and cows to them every month.
Yep.
And everybody's like, isn't there closer places? And I'm like, yeah, but we toured them all and we figured out where we wanted to go and we figured out who was doing the best job and who has the best packaging, because this is like my soapbox, but like you can raise the best of the best.
Yeah.
But they are the one step between me and you, the consumer.
Right, exactly.
So it doesn't matter if I have the best beef, if they cut it like crap and, you know, like.
And you talked about the time frame and the investment and all the effort that goes into it. It's like
Yes.
you put in all this hard work and then you screw it up like in the last step. I
Exactly.
mean, that's painful.
So I think that was just something huge. And it goes back to, you know, you got to find, just in business, you got to find people that you create relationships with. And I have been blessed to work with them to where because I hadn't been with them long when COVID hit and they shut down, no new customers, it was like a year wait list to get anything processed.
Wow.
So to go through that with them, it's like, all right, we're staying.
Yeah.
We're here.
Oh my gosh. So, yeah, and I mean, like, talking about, you know, just the value chain, so to speak, from, you know, raising the cows from the mamas that are all part of your own like group, and then, you know, getting to the point where we can come and eat it. I mean, it's crazy
like how things have evolved, right? So we've always had cattle, but we've been through, I would say, not almost every breed, but like we used to raise Centipole. So we had registered Centipole, which is a red cow, and they are very slick, and they are from St. Croix.
No way.
So like my dad and mom flew to St. Croix, like they flew cows from St. Croix back here, and everything was registered. So I still have like all my granddaddy's records and stuff. And they were supposed to be able to take the heat. So like Texas, Louisiana, like that's kind of what they were pushing at the time.
Yeah.
And what's really neat about having our own cows is like, I know what I got, right? So we went from Centipole, we went to Herefords, we went to Red Angus, and my dad tells this funny story. He was selling cows and he said they were so pretty, but you always got docked if they weren't black. You would get a lesser amount.
Why
and
is
he
that?
was that because everybody wants black-hided. And so he said he went to sell them, and this was 25 years ago, and he said the guy at the sale barn was like, you raise a really good cow. It's a shame you don't raise nothing nobody wants.
Oh my
God. So he said that year they switched everything to Black Angus. So in 2000, the year 2000. So we're in 2020. So 25 years ago, he switched everything, registered Black Angus bulls. But we still have like so many of our cows that have kind of, you know, we keep babies off of and stuff. So I still have like some really slick black, and I know it's because they're descendants of.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
That is really cool.
And I tell everybody we have our dream bulls right now. Back to my dream hogs.
Yes.
So all our bulls right now are from Garner Angus, which is in Kansas, and they are like the top tier Angus people. So we buy bulls based on their marbling score.
Okay.
And
how do you, in the marbling, like you can't measure that until after you process it, right?
So they have all these records, and the Angus breed is probably one of the best with like record keeping. And then I want a bull that has a lower birth weight, and it's crazy because thinking back like years, and I remember pulling calves, which meant, you know, it was a really big calf and they needed help, and we haven't done that in at least 20 years.
And you're saying like pulling them out,
like helping them have the baby.
Oh my gosh.
And people still have to do that if they're not buying, you know, which sometimes you still do. But anyway, when we switched to that, it's just so cool being able to see our genetics play out with how everything's turned, come into with being able to offer it to the public.
Yeah. So you've started, like, you've had a couple different, would you call it breeds? Am I using the right, or what do you think? Okay. So
over the years,
you've got different breeds, and have you like crossbred them at all? Or
yeah.
is that
So we would still have. So when you think about it, you're crossing like the Centerpole with a Hereford bull or whatever. So same thing with hogs. So I just purchased a new Berkshire boar, and I'll be breeding him to. I've got some Durocs. I mean, all these heritage breeds, and so you're crossing them for different reasons. And I mean, my hogs are like my babies, but they're so pretty. And we make all of our own hog feed.
Yeah.
And we just had to buy in the last 2 years a new feed mill. We were using the one that my dad had been using since like the 80s. And my husband was like, if I patch it one more time, it's just gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
But it's neat being able to take everything we've learned from our parents and grandparents.
Yeah, and just like generational, institutional knowledge that gets handed down. Oh my gosh.
It's wild.
I wonder I would love to see what this place looked like in 1898.
Can you imagine? Like,
do you guys have, I mean, yeah, what do you think it looked like in 1898, like this property right here?
There's no telling. Like when and so many, even like so with Granddaddy, he's dug up some of his, like any old pictures he has.
Yeah.
And I keep telling him, I'm like, we need to get somebody with a good camera to come take pictures of that picture and have a way to like.
To save that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing history. That would be.
It's crazy. I'll never forget, he tells a story about like he got bit by a copperhead, and he tells the story about how far he had to walk to get help, and then they had to take a mule and wagon.
Oh my gosh.
Like I don't know how many miles to find somebody who had a pickup truck back then, and I was just like, the way we could never wrap our head around.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now it's like, taking my dog for a walk. He got bit by a little copperhead, but like, throw him in the truck, go to the emergency bed, and like, and we're like, freaking out,
It's just crazy how you think about how the things have changed in one lifetime. In one lifetime. How much has changed, and I can't imagine another 90 years. Like, what will it look like here?
I know, I kind of don't want to.
Yeah.
But that's what's so cool about what you guys are doing is like you can, and all entrepreneurs is like we can shape the future of what we want it to look like by the businesses and the relationships and the visions that we have.
100%. We just planted our first round of sweet corn.
Okay.
So, which is a little early. If it frosts late, it'll die.
Yep.
But last year we raised probably the most sweet corn we've done in a while, and it was just such a success. So we're gonna try this year. My husband's gonna plant, I think he said every other week, so we'll have it kind of all summer.
Awesome.
And that's kind of our new thing. Is this is our second year with the produce, and we're getting a ton of it local, and it's such a small industry with agriculture that we're being able to source different products from across the state.
So we started to talk a little bit about, like, tell us like the scale of like everything that you guys have going on, from cows, hogs, sweet corn.
Yeah, so I think we did touch on it. So with the row crops, we're raising corn, soybeans, cotton,
Yep.
and the peanuts.
Okay.
And then we're dabbling in our sweet corn and our produce. And
Yep.
I actually grew, I was determined to find them. So you've probably seen them. I think it was 2 summers ago. You started seeing the really tiny cucumbers.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I was determined I was going to grow them because I couldn't find them. I couldn't get them on my produce. Like, nobody I could find offered them.
Uh-huh.
And so last year I bought some stupid expensive seed, and I was like, let's just try it. And they were amazing. They were the same ones that you have been seeing.
Heck yeah.
And so I'm going to plant right many of those this year.
I can't wait.
Yes. So I'm hoping, my goal is once I get everything kind of rolling with, get everything straight for planting, I want to move it to where it's more accessible, because my vision is like, how cool would it be like once a month you could bring your son out here and go pick a squash, or anything.
Would be
and
amazing.
again, everybody's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, but I wasn't crazy last time y'all said that. So I just think, we're so far removed from how our food is being raised. And so if we can start young with these kids and being like, hey, this is how it grows, and it grows, we have to have irrigation. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I think it would be cool to be able to bring your kids out and be like, hey, let's go pick some cucumbers and then take them home.
Yeah, and like talk about like education and like educating our kids and like homeschooling and what you learn in school, and like getting back to the basic fundamentals of like what happens if you're not able to buy food at a grocery store. Like where does food come from? How do you get food? What are you gonna do?
And it's so wild, and I told somebody, I said, I've been so blessed to have the community kind of support all this. It's like, how at some point can I give back by letting people come out more often to be able to enjoy some stuff like that?
Yeah.
So I'm fingers crossed my little cucumbers do good again this year, and we'll see how it goes.
I hope so too.
So.
Well, I think you've given back an incredible amount to the community. I mean, for us to be able to come and get good, clean food that we feel like there's nothing better than being able to do that. Like seriously, and I think us having our kid, we were already getting into the idea of like, okay, what actually am I eating right now? But then when the baby came along, it's like, all right, now we've got to feed our baby.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna feed them?
And I think we're so blessed to live in. Our nation has like the safest food supply. I mean, we're so incredibly blessed, and you want to talk about like really getting into like where your food comes from and stuff. On one of those farm tours, we were at the border and we toured the facility that checks all of the produce coming in from Mexico.
Okay.
So at that time when we were touring, I think they said something between 900 and 1,000 18-wheelers came through the border every single day hauling produce into the U.S. They checked one of 100 trucks. Every 100 they would check one for insects and stuff that weren't in the U.S. that we didn't want to bring in the U.S.
Right.
But when you start like really thinking about in the U.S. we have regulations and we have all kinds of regulations.
yeah, exactly.
But I have farmer friends from across the state that they're either raising hundreds and hundreds of acres of tobacco, cucumbers for Mount Olive pickles, jalapenos. And when you start diving into the issues we have in the U.S. on how can we still survive farming but meet all this criteria, we're struggling with that. But at the same time, it's like you start really looking at the food you're being brought in, and you start seeing different countries. Nobody's checking that over there. And obviously we can't raise everything, so I'm not going to sit here and be like only get it from the U.S. I sold pink pineapples last year, and they came from Costa Rica. We're not going to raise those here. But when you have that option, it's always, I say that prices are always going to be higher because what we pay labor for anything that's going to be a manual picked item. And when you go into H2As and all the issues we're having with Department of Labor and everything else, and then we cannot compete with these farms that are in third world countries and what they're having to pay them. And, not to get into it on the podcast, but when you start thinking about that, like if you want the best of the best,
you got to pay a little bit for it.
And I think that's hard sometimes for the general public to wrap their head around.
Yeah. Well, also, and it goes into like a much more systemic issue as well, is that, the people, there's so many people out there that they have no option except to buy, the lowest cost food.
100%.
And then that creates, a downward spiral because that food's typically not the highest in nutrients or like the cleanest food. And then what does that mean for their health and, development of their children? And, it's just
I tell everybody there's a place in agriculture for everybody. So there's a place in agriculture for the small farmer, and there's a place in agriculture for the big farmer. Because the small farmers are not going to feed the world.
Exactly.
And so I am one of those that's like, I will never bash anything, right? Because we have to feed America, and we have to feed America
That's right.
the safest and the healthiest way we can. But it's really cool to see across the state and across the nation the small farms that are able to really feed their community high-end stuff.
Yeah. No.
So,
and I mean, us, like, I mean, here's some market data for you, some feedback.
Okay.
I think, like, truly, when we come and we purchase the food here, and like I look at the receipt and and everything we've purchased, I'm like, to me it's like extremely fair and extremely reasonable. Like,
well,
I'm not telling you to raise your prices, but
thank you for saying that.
To, like, seriously, like, when you think about everything that you do and all the work that goes into it, and then to buy a pound of ground beef for $10, like, I feel like that's totally fair, and I'm happy to pay those prices all day long. So,
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's I tell everybody, the customers that come in and they're like, hey, we love what you're doing, and I'm like, that makes it, when I'm feeding cows in the snow, or I'm feeding cows in the pouring down rain, I'm like, okay, people really support it.
Yeah, that's your why, like your why, right?
Yes.
It's like, why am I out here doing this? It's like,
exactly. So that makes it worth it.
Yeah. Do you have any idea on, like, how many customers you guys have served, like, over, like, I guess kind of through, like, the new old model, like with the pack house and stuff, since you started it up?
I'm sure my husband does.
Yeah.
I tell everybody he's the brains. Like I said, I like to feed the cows and I like to sell the cows. But like when it gets down to the nitty gritty, I shove that to him, and he probably would know exactly how many.
I'd be curious to. But also, we were talking about before we got on air, you were talking about just kind of like your role within the organization, and like, and I was like, yeah, you're a visionary, right? Like, you've got the ideas, you've got
the big ideas,
a million things that, like, we could do and this and that, and you're like, man, like, I could, I need someone to help take care of the day-to-day so I can go do what I do, which is, I think, a story that all entrepreneurs, face at some point.
I think so too, and I think, I always say, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if y'all were in my head, y'all would be like, okay, you could calm down, right? Because my dreams sometimes get a little big, but I think that's the fun part, because we are self-employed, and we get to make our own decisions, and it's just, my dad's always said that everybody gets the same 24 hours. It's just what you do with it.
Yeah.
And I think
like
that goes a long way.
I really like that.
And then, of course, I told my husband, I said, 2 weeks ago, we were like, we're so busy, we should slow down. And then we started a new venture this week. So I'm like, exactly. I guess we'll sleep when we're dead.
Oh my gosh.
But
why not? Let's just start another little adjacent business.
That's right. But that goes back to like how agriculture is changing and everything else.
Yep.
And we didn't even say what. So for the record, we bought a drone, and we've been doing our own custom spraying, and now we're going to offer that service to other farmers and be able to be a dealer of those drones. So really cool, and they're not just being used for agriculture, but super helpful with where we're at. So like after that last tropical storm where we got like 20 some inches of rain, all the farmers around us, your hay starts getting eat up by army worms, right? And you got 8 inches of water out there and nobody can spray, and we were able to save our whole hay crop because we were able to spray. And then pumpkins, we're not having to drive the tractors and smash the pumpkins. We're able to spray for that. So it's, if you'd have told me 5 years ago, I'd be like, we are not going to be flying drones. But it's been really neat that's game changing when you talk about saving a whole hay crop, because we raised all of our own hay to feed the cows. So it's definitely, y'all came in and passed all those pretty green fields. So that's actually oats. And we will cut those, it's probably not going to be too long, and we will bale it wet, and then we wrap it, and it's called haylage. And so it ferments in the plastic.
Interesting. And
then we'll feed that all year too.
All year. And is that for cows and hogs, or is that
just for the cows?
Just for the cows.
Yep. And then we pull in right behind the peanut pickers.
Yep.
And we kind of rake up all the vines that are left, and we feed that to the cows. And
awesome.
It's just such a kind of a cycle.
The circle of life.
Yeah.
Right?
It's really neat.
The cycle, and oh man, that's so neat. So like, if you look 10 years into the future, what does a Northwest Land and Cattle look like in 10 years?
Scary.
Do you think? I know.
I don't know if I want to say it out loud.
You don't have to. And you don't have to.
You know, when we start thinking about where I want to be, I want to be this big community hub to where you can almost get everything you need.
Yep.
And the produce has really helped that. So we'll start off April 5th, sourcing local strawberries and all the things. But when I think about that, I would love to have a on-the-farm bakery. You know, I can see my husband has always wanted to make our own grits and raise it all, and then have the kind of the mill and all that. So I don't know, all these little things that I don't know if they'll all ever come to. But
a bunch of little like adjacent things that you could like kind of bring into the fold.
And you know, when you think about where we're at and all, you know, I would love to see more kids stuff out here, because especially with, you know, my kids being 9, kids learn so much by like doing. So I have this dream of being somewhere that you can come out on a Saturday after a ball game and you can get a slushie, you can let your kids play, but it's also just like a community hub.
Yeah, for gathering people, relationships, and also, you know, sustenance and sustaining ourselves. That's awesome.
Yeah. So fingers crossed, 10 years, we'll see.
Yeah, I bet you a lot of that and more will probably, just judging based on, you know, where you started and where you are now.
We'll see.
So let's talk a little bit about the pack house.
Okay.
Because I overheard you saying when you were talking to TK that it's always been called the pack house.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always used for what you're using it for now.
Yes. So this was my great granddaddy's tobacco pack house. So back then,
that generation, so 3 greats, we're talking 19...
Great. Maybe 1 great. My dad would know.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't trying to get caught up.
No.
But I'm just talking, is that like the early 1900s? Like which...
Yeah. Yeah, because Granddaddy was born in 1928, so...
Yeah.
Had to be...
Yeah.
So they were, isn't that wild?
That's so cool.
But I remember all these like little barns, and all those would be tobacco, and then they would bring it here, and this was the pack house.
Okay.
So they would bundle it to go to market.
Yep.
So I couldn't change the name, and I actually got a small grant through the Tobacco Trust Fund to get in my barn. And what's wild, I still have people asking if they can come buy the wood that's back here, and I tell everybody, I was like, my dad's a wood hoarder, right? So this whole thing was full of not only all his like special wood, but I found like my great grandma's china, and her favorite, she smoked like a freight train, right? So she had like the coolest little dish, and it had like the little things where you put your cigarettes in it, which I mean, I feel like that generation, she drank bourbon all day and smoked cigarettes. And I'm like, I want to be her. Like, I mean, that's so cool.
One of the great American generations,
right?
huh?
I mean, like, they don't make them like that no more.
No, they definitely don't make them like they used to.
But, I mean, the things I found in that barn was just really cool.
Yeah. So now it is like the retail spot for people to come and purchase packaged meats?
And we do single cuts. You don't have to buy a box anymore.
Yep.
We're open. It changes every season pretty much, but we're getting ready to roll into open a lot.
Yeah.
So all of our beef, all of our pork, lots of local goods, but we sell the only rice that's grown in North Carolina. We sell that here.
No way, I didn't know that.
We hadn't had it too long. And all kind of things. Grits that comes from off of a farm in South Carolina. Some other bacon mixes. We get fresh bread delivered from a bakery in Whiteville. She was delivering just on Fridays. Now it's going to be multiple times a week because we'll be open more. My mom's fresh eggs come right out of her chickens that y'all have probably been hearing this whole podcast. But again, kind of starting my community hub. I love all the things that I feel like I love to cook, and I really love, my husband loves to grill. I say I'm like moral support.
Yeah.
But we have hand blended spices from a girl in North Carolina. So it kind of all circles back to either entertaining or cooking.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I mean, if you think of like all the other businesses that are part of your business, like talking about the spices and the grits and the rice and all that, it's like the more exposure you get, it's just exponentially impacting.
And one of the
community.
coolest things I have, I met him through, I just got done with a project with A&T University and Tobacco Trust Fund with hogs. So we've been traveling up there. But I sell my beef fat to now friends of mine. They make tallow out of it and then add the goat's milk, and I sell her handmade soap. And then I have another girl that's doing handmade candles, and I said I would never sell candles again because I tried it years ago, and she like gave me one, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not interested, and I took it home and lit it, and I've been selling her candles ever since because you can smell it when you walk in the house. So little things like that I feel like, you know, it has to be unique to what we are offering.
Yeah. So a pretty like nerdy business question, but I always like to understand like what is like a constraint to achieving the goals or a constraint to growth. So like if let's say that like for you guys to be able to you know to grow the business of the pack house, of your core business of the hogs and the beef, how many more customers do you think, like if you got just like a huge influx of customers, do you think that you have the supply to be able to handle like rapid increase, or like would that take time to like raise more cattle and raise more pigs to like slowly be able to handle that?
So yes and no, right? Okay. So I love this question, by the way.
Cool.
And my husband would probably be able to be like, we need this many, you know.
Yeah.
But it does go back to how long it takes to feed them out. But I have the cattle, right? So I have more than I'm processing every month.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be a huge thing.
Okay.
It would just be like, oh, I'm not going to sell them this way. I'm going to keep them and put them in our program.
Right.
And then hogs are so much quicker just because their gestation is so much shorter.
Right.
And I'm turning like at least 2 litters off of my sows a year, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, we're talking about inventory turnover now a little bit.
And what's crazy is, you know, this past year has been really growing pains for me. I think before this got started, I was mentioning that it's hard for me to let go.
Yes.
So it's been growing pains as far as me being able to let other people say, hey, y'all look at this, tell me what you think. And especially with offering all new different sausages, and now I have things that I necessarily wouldn't pick off the cut sheet.
Yeah. But
now it's like so much input from the community, and I'm like, oh, well, if you want it, I can get it. I got the whole animal. Just tell me what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think yes. What's funny is when COVID hit, I did have that huge influx, but I knew it would go away. And some farms, and I wanted to, right, but had to reel it back in. But like, you can invest as much as you want, real quick, like.
Right.
But I kept thinking, COVID's not gonna be here forever. If we can keep 20% of all these customers, like, let's just focus on doing that.
Smart.
And
Very
so,
smart.
You know, I didn't jump out there and do a whole bunch of stuff. But I think, you know, it would take time as far as like feeding them out. But it's doable.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, just thinking of the long-term trajectory.
I know. It's kind of nervous.
I tell all our friends and all our family. I'm like, hey, you guys got to go check this place out.
And the drive is getting shorter. Like, I feel like I feel like it's getting shorter.
The drive's getting shorter. That is hilarious.
But Well, thank you so much for
thank you
fun.
so much. And I just want to say, like, you are an entrepreneur in the truest sense of the word and a visionary. Like, seriously. And I think that there's a lot of farmers out there that are entrepreneurs, and I didn't realize how much entrepreneurship goes into being a farmer, and it's the coolest thing. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for agreeing to do this, because we've been coming here for a couple years, or I think probably going on 2 years, and I've been talking about this with Natalie, like, oh, this would be the coolest podcast, and I've just been like nervous to reach out to you, but I finally did, and you were so nice and quick to respond, and so thank you. I really appreciate it.
This has been fun. I've enjoyed it. I always love talking about farming, so
heck yeah,
that's the easiest thing for me to talk about.
Awesome.
Most people just aren't brave enough to like put me in front of cameras and give me a microphone.
Well, thank you, AJ.
Thank
you very much. It was awesome.
It's been fun.